Hello and welcome to Like Maria from Cambridge. Today we're going to do our first example of a complete IELTS test. So this is for anyone studying for that exam. In this scenario, I am going to be the examiner and Maria is going to be the person taking the test. So let's get on with the questions. So Maria, can you tell me a little bit about yourself? Do you work or are you studying?
So at the moment, I'm working. I work as a teacher and I teach online. So I have usually lots of students in the time when they come back from school. So it means that I'm working maybe, say, from 4 till 9 o'clock in the evening. Because my job is teaching, I do still have to do quite a lot of studying and preparation, but it's not formal studying for any exams or anything. It's more feeding into the subjects I'm teaching.
And now can you tell me a little bit about the types of books you'd like to read?
So, I am a voracious reader and I really enjoy all sorts of books, fiction and non-fiction. I like reading autobiographies, biographies. Perhaps I'd say my favourite would be something historical fiction. So, something like Wolf Hall, for example, where the author is mingling historical fiction and um, the story and the plot and the characters, particularly maybe from the 16th century or something like that.
And do you prefer to read books digitally or do you like physical paper books?
Ah, well, that's a tricky choice. Mainly when I'm on holiday, I really enjoy reading books digitally. I have a Kindle reader and also I can get the Kindle app on my phone. So it means that books are really transportable and I don't need to decide which books I want to read before I get to my holiday destination. It also means that I can take lots of books, and as I read so much, I can race through books. I would have to say, though, that I probably prefer reading a paper book when it comes down to it. There's something about the feel and the smell of reading a book, and also the fact that there's so much history in bookmaking going right back that it feels good to have still a connection with the words on the page and the printing kind of tradition, I suppose.
And what do you think about books that are made into films?
So that's a bit of a tricky question. Sometimes I read a book, particularly maybe a classic like a Jane Austen novel or something, and then I watch the film. And I'm very disappointed because the film doesn't represent the characters or the setting or the plot, even sometimes, as the book did in my imagination. So I do struggle sometimes and I can be disappointed with that. However, some films I think are really good representations of books, and I think this is really true with maybe science fiction, adventure, fantasy books. So, for example, like Lord of the Rings, I think the film of that far surpasses the experience of reading the book. And of course, it's always really good that sometimes you're introduced to a particular book through a film that you see, and then you go away and read the book. So it works kind of both ways. So while I do enjoy watching films of books, sometimes it can be a little bit difficult for me.
And now, Maria, can you tell me something about the types of foods you like to eat?
So I enjoy all sorts of foods from all different countries. I would say, if pressed, that my favourite food would be Italian food. I really like pasta. I like that it's really easy to make a quick pasta dish. And also, I love when I go to Italy, for example, that you can get a really simple dish with a really simple sauce, maybe two, three ingredients, and the fresh ingredients really shine through in the sauce. And it's just a really lovely um, food to eat. I think also it really complements a glass of wine nicely.
And now, can you tell me a little bit about your baking? When you bake, do you prefer to make sweet things or savoury things?
So, in terms of baking, I'd say I'm really much better at the sweet things. I do make quiches and sausage rolls and things sometimes, but actually, I'm much better at baking. And I really like to bake biscuits. Shortbread would be my favourite. Small cakes, Victoria sandwich. And sometimes I've been a little bit more adventurous and made something like Chelsea buns. But more often than not, it's just shortbread, ginger snaps, things like that.
And can you tell me about a time when you've baked something really amazing, a dessert or a cake, something that you were really pleased with?
So, I think probably one of the most recent things that I've been really pleased with is I made some choux pastry and I used it to make some profiteroles, which are kind of like a mini eclair. I filled them with cream and I made a chocolate fondant on top. Now, the reason I was really pleased with this is it was for New Year, for a New Year party round at my friend's house. And my friend comes from France and she's an amazing chef, an amazing cook. And I just wanted to take something that was quite impressive and would be a little bit of a spectacle. So I piled all these choux buns up and poured the chocolate sauce over them on a big plate. And I was really delighted when she was very, very complimentary about my baking, and everybody ate them. Everybody really enjoyed them. So that was really satisfying. And I felt that if I'd impressed my friend from France, I must have made a good dessert.
Thank you, Maria. Okay, now Maria is going to take us through an example from the topic section. So I'm going to hand over to Maria.
So I have card here in front of me. You can see it on the screen in a moment. It says, describe your experience of music. And on it, it gives me 3 bullet points. You could say what your experience of music was when you're young, what your experience of music is now, describe any live music that you've been to. So I would have my 1 minute and I would prepare some ideas about this, and then I would speak for 2 minutes. So I'm going to give you that example now. So when I was young, I really didn't play any music until I got to school. I did listen to music at home, and mainly it was on what we called the wireless in those days, or the radio. So when I got to school, we were all encouraged to play music, and that was in the form of playing recorders once a week and sometimes singing. And we had a very scary elderly nun who, because I went to a convent school, she played the piano and she was quite strict and scary. But we all played recorders and it sounded pretty awful. As you can imagine, 30 sort of 5-year olds in a classroom all blowing down recorders, not a pretty sound. Now that I'm older, I still enjoy playing music. I play the piano very badly and I play flute, which I can kind of play okay. I'm not amazing, but I enjoy it. I don't play in an orchestra at the moment or anything like that. The music I like now would be folk music, and that I think comes from my Irish roots. I like all sorts of folk music, but I suppose my favourite would be fiddle music. So people in a group playing violins together. And I like folk music because it's very informal, it's very easy listening, and people sometimes, especially in Ireland, just gather together and play in the pub together. And it's very easy to listen to, but also have a conversation with your friends. It's not serious listening music. Also, I like to dance, and so if I'm invited to a party in Ireland or something, I really enjoy listening to that music. Live music I've been to recently, I would have to say my favourite version of that would be going to the ballet. And for me, going to the ballet after lockdown was a tremendous experience. It was lovely to hear
Okay, thank you, Maria.
live music again.
Thank you for that. I'm going to ask you a couple of follow-up questions now. So the first one is, what do you think is the future of music? Musicians face difficulties with streaming services and not really earning as much money as they should. What do you think might happen?
So I think that's very difficult circumstances for musicians these days because they spend a lot of time preparing materials and being creative. And with all the streaming services, obviously people can share quite indiscriminately, and sometimes they don't pay for the music. And this obviously affects what the musicians can earn. On the other side of the coin, of course, if you're young and don't earn much money and you want to be exposed to lots of different music, it's great for you. But I think we all do need to bear in mind that music isn't free, that there are people whose jobs it is to produce the music and um, package it, for example, in a form that is good to hear. And we should pay them according to their worth.
And how do you think the digital environment will affect the future of music, particularly AI?
So obviously, as I've said, it affects it in terms of the streaming and accessibility of music, which is great. I can walk into my lounge and just ask Alexa to play something or get it from Apple Music. With I think that's a very difficult question because, again, it's about who owns the music, I suppose, really. And AI gives the possibility of copying music, of creating music in the style of someone. I'm sure if I asked AI to create a song in the style of the Beatles, it would give me a reasonable set of lyrics which I could work with. So there are serious questions that surround the music environment and the music business at the moment. I think we need to be very careful to put some regulations and some laws in place to protect the creators and the creative environment. But equally, I think AI can be great fun to play with, and I'm sure one can have a lot of fun creating different types of music as long as we are not treading on other people's feet and kind of um, causing them harm in their professions.
And finally, budget cuts in schools mean that a lot of young people aren't learning instruments or aren't having music lessons. Why do you think that's damaging?
So I think this can be very damaging. I think schools should not be all about academic subjects. And I think students need to be introduced to all sorts of different types of pastimes, hobbies, and different cultural activities. And music would be one of these. So if young children don't get access to music and the opportunity to experience it, they're going to be impoverished in a way. I think music brings fun. It brings bonding with other students when you play in a group. It brings joy and pleasure. And it also is something that can often cross cultures and introduce you to different cultures if you listen to different types of music. So, for young children in particular, to miss out on that experience, I think it can be very damaging to their development and their view of the world. So, I would definitely want to protest against any cuts, particularly as a teacher. I think this sort of education is really important.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you to you for watching. That was a complete IELTS example of how you might approach an exam. And we hope you've got some good examples and some good vocabulary that you can take away. And if you'd like more, don't forget to like and subscribe. Bye for now.